All right, Aj Mansour, KFAN, Westwood One Radio Row in New Orleans for the Final Four. And we're joined right now by the Big Ten Coach of the Year, Greg Gard, Wisconsin Badgers, Big Ten champions. Great season for you guys. Congratulations, and thanks for taking some time with us.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no doubt. This tournament is crazy. You've seen upsets on both sides of it. Unfortunately, this year it ended a little earlier than you guys wanted, but the parity in college basketball is what makes March Madness fun. Right. Tell me a little bit about that, a little bit maybe about how the players, for good and bad, can handle that too.
Well, I'll answer the second part first. The players, they take it hard.
Right.
You know, it's not even so much that you lost the game. It's a finality of a season and the finality of a journey that you've gone on with teammates. So that's hard, you know, regardless of whether it ends in game one or we've been all the way to the national championship game and lost that one in 2015. So regardless of when it ends, there's going to be a crash landing, so to speak, and a very emotional time. But you're right about the parity. I mean, you just look across the field of 68, and I have a little saying I use in Madison that all the bad teams at that time of the year are on spring break. They get their toes in the sand. So you're going to face a good team that's won between 23 and 30 games. And if you have a bad 4 or 5 minutes, if you have a matchup that's a little hard or a bad matchup for you, if you have somebody get hurt, a lot more things can go wrong than can go right when you get to that time of year. And there's some luck involved with being able to continue to advance.
You've had the great fortune of having veteran leaders, upperclassmen to kind of carry your teams. The transfer portal opens up a door to a bunch of interesting things. Tell me about Brad Davison, Maple Grove, Minnesota. Our listeners are familiar with him and familiar with his time with Wisconsin. Do you think that there will be Brad Davisons in the future? Not, he's a special kid.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, the leaders and the kids who stay there for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a whole new world in terms of the landscape and the opportunities. I mean, there's obviously positives of it and there's drawbacks of it. It's getting a little more difficult to sustain a roster for a course of a 3 or 4 year period. But you don't have to. That's where we are. You have to learn to manage it. Brad's in a world by himself, though, in terms of his demeanor, his makeup, his personality, how he goes about it. I don't know if they had made another. I hope they've made another Brad Davison. I need to find him. Right. I'll tell you that. But he's been an absolute coach's dream to coach and have in our program. Can't say enough about how many positive things he's done for us.
You look up and down your roster, you see Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, South Dakota, and then there's an Estonia and Ontario. But you seem to recruit the Midwest, upper Midwest pretty hard. That hasn't always been a focus for college basketball, but as of late, for sure us in Minneapolis, we have paid attention. Tyus Jones, Jalen Suggs. The basketball scene seems like it's spreading out. That the upper Midwest, Minneapolis, Madison, Milwaukee areas, the talent is spreading out. Does that make it more difficult, or does it open up different opportunities when you are looking to recruit players?
Yeah, I think the landscape of college basketball has exploded anyway across. There's so many more doors open. So many kids are more willing to travel to go to different schools. There's more opportunities for them to get seen and to get exposure than there was 20, 25 years ago with all the AAU going on around the country. And you're right, basketball in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area has just exploded. I've been recruiting there for over 20 years and just have watched from where you usually just went downtown, to some of the inner city schools, and now you go everywhere. Wayzata, Shakopee, I mean, you name it, down to Lakeville, as we've had some players from Lakeville. So, and across that, and obviously our first player from there, Minneapolis North, Cameron Taylor. So it's just the basketball. The coaches have done a great job. The AAU programs have done a great job of making the game popular and giving opportunity to so many kids. And you've seen the results from that.
I don't want to harp too much on the transfer portal, but it is a topic of conversation here at NABC, and we're still kind of learning how that works. And I'm sure your staff has jumped in head first to try and figure that out and find the advantages you can have. But there's also some detriment. It goes both ways, right? So you're recruiting to keep players, you're recruiting to get players, and at this time of year specifically, I would guess you are in that portal constantly trying to pay attention to what might become available and maybe preparing yourself for some hard conversations.
Yeah, there's obviously you have the freedom that the student athletes have now, which I agree with, but it obviously causes some uncertainty as you get to this time of year of what your roster is going to look like. It's not as maybe as sustainable as it was 5-10 years ago because there's more freedom of that movement. in a variety of ways. I'm going to lose Johnny Davis to the NBA draft. So that's maybe 10, 12 months ago that wasn't planned for. So you have to learn to manage it. You have to accept it. It's not going to go away. But there are some. My biggest concern about it is what's going to happen to graduation rates, because as players or student athletes move from school A to B to C, not always the credits don't transfer with them. And if they get to the end of their eligibility and don't have their degree finished, what's the incentive to stay in school, and will they? So that's my biggest concern. That there's gonna be a lot of movement, and at the end of the day, the kids are gonna suffer by not maybe having their degree finished and be as far down the road academically as they would have been if there was less movement.
A similar question when it comes to recruiting and how you handle your players and guide them when they are at Wisconsin. Name and image licensing, NILs, it's a new thing, again, that we kind of sprinkle in. Again, a good thing for players, but at the same time, we need to learn how to train them in it, how to do it properly, and how to use it for your advantage, too, as far as responsibly recruiting and doing those things. It's a whole new ballgame.
It is, and I think all of us are in uncharted water. We just don't know, and it's different from school to school. It's different from region of the country to another region. It's different from conference to conference. So I think we're all trying to learn on the fly. And it's all, I think, been very eye-opening in a positive way in terms of the opportunities that are there for the student athletes. And, I think the biggest thing is we've tried to do at Wisconsin is educate them in terms of, the proper way to go about it, but also the safeguards. Be aware of taxes, be aware of all the things that maybe when they present the NIL they don't talk about, that just so the student athletes have as much information at their fingertips so they can make very educated decisions.
Talking to a bunch of coaches, you guys make it seem really easy to bring in players and have them be a part of your culture, but I would imagine that is also a skill set or something you pay attention to. There's a balance where you have to talk about, okay, we have a really talented player, but they may not fit as well as this player who does fit but might not be quite as good. There's a lot that goes into recruiting that I will never understand.
Right.
Seeing the potential, balancing those things, culture and talent. Is that something that you learned along the way? Is it something you learned the hard way, maybe? And is it always ever changing now that kids have different attitudes?
It's always changing. I think you've seen that regardless of NIL, regardless of the transfer portal. And you have to adapt and change with it. I think the other thing is player development. We've had one McDonald's All-American in my 20 years we've been at Wisconsin. He's over here doing radio for Milwaukee, Brian Butch. But, you have to develop players and have players that understand that maybe they aren't where they can be and accept that and embrace that and wanting to be comfortable being uncomfortable. In order to grow, you have to fight through some adversity. If I have to fight through, I'm not the best guy on this team right now. I was in high school. I'm not now. I got to work. And will they accept that and continue to grow and develop and push themselves? And we've been very fortunate. We've had guys that really have bought in, want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, want to be part of a championship culture. And with the transfer portal, that's always a challenge too, because you're bringing in somebody that's maybe been somewhere else, good or bad, and what the experiences they've had, how do they impact your culture that you've got going. And we have had two in this past year in Jacoby Neath and Chris Vogt that came from Wake Forest and Cincinnati, and they were terrific in our culture, like they had been there for numerous years. So there's always that trepidation, I think, as a coach of, what's the right additive and what can be the negatives of bringing somebody maybe from the outside that hasn't maybe grown, or, you're in the transfer portal. It's kind of like speed dating. Right. You don't have a lot of time to make decisions and build relationships.
Last question for Wisconsin Badgers head coach Greg Gard. Last one on the transfer portal too. There's a balance there too, and I get these. I don't get opportunities to talk basketball like this with coaches that have to balance the ability to bring in somebody who has veteran leadership and experience on the court, but also understanding that you're building for the future and bringing in high schoolers that could, be influenced by those players, but at the same time, you have to plan for the future, for this year and everything. That also is a new thing. I guess not always new because it has existed, but it like you said, it's speed dating for the players, but at the same time, you're speed learning this process. Right. How do you balance that where you're planning for the future? And
that's hard. That's hard at times because sometimes younger players won't be as patient, and work their way through the system and develop.
And they have an option.
They have an option, right. Exactly. We live in a world of instant gratification, and so you have to find the balance of making sure the players that are coming in, whether they're transfers or whether they're high school freshmen coming in, that they understand what the process is going to be. And I tell our recruits all the time, whatever you've heard about college basketball, whoever told you it was going to be easy is lying to you. It'll be everything but easy. It's going to be hard. There's going to be days you're going to walk off the floor and not like me. There's going to be days walk off the floor and you think you can't play at this level. There's going to be days you walk off the floor and think you're a lottery pick. You're going to experience all kinds of emotions, but just understand we're here to help you, and that's part of the growing process. What you learn here and how you grow as a team and as an individual help you for what will be life after basketball when you have to walk out in the real world.
Big Ten champions, Big Ten Coach of the Year. Greg Gard, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep, thanks. Aj Mansour down in New Orleans for KFAN and Westwood One Radio Row. We'll be right back after this.